Hi, I'm Clark on Temptress. I'm not a neuroscientist, but back in my 20s, I just for fun did some research into what's now called the happy hormones. That would be dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and endorphin. I looked into what they did in the human body. It kind of interested me. And once I realized how they worked, I came up with a plan of how to use them to reprogram my mind. I kind of had this image of what I was and an image of what I wanted to be, and I used this method to help me become that man I wanted to be. In this video, I'm going to talk about dopamine. Dopamine has good, it has bad, you got to know how to use it, but if you use it right, I think it's got great potential for improving yourself. Whether you're planning on going sailing or not, this video could really help you out.
In this series, we talk about how to live a more intentional life by focusing on 5 things. Defining your enough, what you need to be happy, and how you can prepare for that life. Understanding investment theory, what you need to know to get there. Developing good habits and motivations to help you along the way, and actually doing it, specific steps to work towards your enough goal. Lastly, finding community so you can connect with others striving to live an intentional life.
Back in my 20s, I did some study into neurotransmitters. What actually got me into it was I found some writings about precursors to neurotransmitters. So I was like, for example, using choline in my diet to increase my level of acetylcholine, which is for memory. Strangely enough, I never could remember proper nouns until I went through that process, and now I still to this day know all the names of all the neurotransmitters and precursors and such, and I think it's because I consumed choline. We're not going to go through all the neurotransmitters in this video, and not all the precursors. There's just a lot to it. There's lots of information. You guys have the internet now. I had to read like real books from a library. It was trickier back then. So no excuses if you want to know, but I'm going to give you an overview about, well, the big 4, but mostly how to use dopamine. So what are the big 4? Dopamine. Dopamine's there in our brain for motivation and reward. And we're going to concentrate on that one. Serotonin, which is kind of stability and contentment and, that kind of feeling. Oxytocin, which is the love hormone, being close to people, feeling good about those you love. And endorphin, which is kind of the painkiller and the euphoria drug in your brain. It's kind of like opioid. Now, technically, dopamine isn't a neurotransmitter. It's called a neuromodulator. Same thing. It affects the way that neurons in your brain and other places can communicate with each other. I used the effects that I could generate from naturally generated, no drugs involved, dopamine in my brain to kind of reprogram my brain, to teach my brain to find joy in things that maybe weren't so joyful for me, but I knew were good for me. In short, I really think that this procedure and the dopamine made me a better person. It kind of made me the man I am today. It definitely helped me to achieve a lot of the things I've achieved. If I had to make a little brochure or a self-help book snippet to try to get you to watch this video, I would say this procedure is the secret to my success. Dopamine feels great, but it's tricky. If you use it wrong, bad things can happen. And if you use it wrong, you will actually feel worse. So it's not just a matter of bringing it up. It's not like you could take a dopamine pill. Actually, you can. We'll get to that later. But don't do that. That brings up your entire level of dopamine, and it kind of blinds your brain from seeing the real dopamine perks. Let's just do a little bit of a picture here. Let's say this is kind of your baseline of dopamine. Great. And then something wonderful happens, and you get this boost, and it's the change in the dopamine level that really makes the difference. This is what makes you feel good. This just feels like normal. If you did something so that this was your baseline and that same feel-good thing happened, that's all you're going to see of it. So you really, really want to avoid those things. The other thing about the graph of dopamine is anytime you have a big win, you're going to have a big loss. anytime, no matter how you get it. If you used a drug to raise your dopamine, expect your new dopamine level the next day to be down here, and you're going to feel like crap because of it. So we want to keep the dopamine control reasonable and appropriate. Now, the things that make the dopamine perks happen, that raise that level of dopamine, that give you that slope, your brain is trying to teach you to do more of those things. Caveman time, dopamine was there probably for two reasons. It's for finding food and finding mates. Anything that works along those lines was put into your brain to give you this motivation to do it and then a reward once you've done it. So you'll want to do more of it. Your brain was trying to addict itself to these good behaviors. Now, we live in a much more complicated brain and we live in a complex society. There's a lot of options and things to do and things to choose with your life. Some of them aren't fun on first blush, but they have great rewards later. And part of living an intentional life is intentionally setting yourself up for success later. Now, the things in life that cause that dopamine perk, those peaks, they're addictions. I mean, that's like the key to addiction in your brain is dopamine. So you can become addicted to damn near anything that gives you a dopamine perk. I mean, that goes from sugar to gambling to cocaine, all of that. We're going to pick what we're addicted to. We're going to become addicted to things like hard work, studying, getting our act together on time, not procrastinating, those kind of things. And I feel I really cut those back in my life in my 20s going through this. A trick to keeping dopamine being effective is variety. If you always get the same pulse out of an activity, always the same, you won't get the advantages out of that pulse anymore. It becomes mundane. So you want to break it up. You want to set it up so sometimes you get the reward and sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's an intense reward. Sometimes it's a more minor reward. And I'm going to go into how to change intensity later on. A good example of this would be gambling and casinos. If you went into a casino and you played a game such that you said, bet, win, always win every time, always exactly the same amount of winnings, well, you might go there to get a bunch of money or whatever you get out of it, but it wouldn't become addicting. It would just be a job. And that's essentially the difference between gambling and a job. You don't know when you're going to get a 21. And when you get one, you get a big pulse of dopamine. But then you don't, and then you don't, and then that lets everything reset. And then you do, and it's totally out of the blue, and you didn't know it was going to happen, and you get that again. And that's why gambling can be very, very addictive. It's why all the casino games are set up that way. Let you win sometimes, let it be a big surprise, make it a happy place, but make sure if you play long enough, you will eventually lose everything, and it goes into their pocket. Don't gamble. If you can do math, you shouldn't be gambling. And if you want to gamble in the stock market, because of my other videos, you know that curve is always going that way. And it's the same gamble, but it's in your favor all the time. What's dopamine feel like? Well, I looked it up because I know what it feels like, but it's visceral for me and I couldn't turn it into words. So what I came up with here was it makes you feel alert but calm. It makes you feel happy. It makes you feel motivated. I think that definitely is a strong feeling for me. It's how you track and remember your successes. Kind of that's a dopamine feeling and procedure. It's tied into drive and excitement, so it's all part of that kind of feeling. And it causes you to look for, crave, and pursue interests outside of yourself. Now, to the visceral way of describing it. This is what I actually did when I was trying to figure out how to feel it so that I would know if I have success or not. There's no test I could buy, a blood test that tells me if I've generated dopamine. But what I did is I waited until I might have even let myself get thirsty, but until I was quite thirsty. And then I got real calm. I got real in touch with what I was feeling, kind of a meditative state. And then I drank plain water. No bubbly water, nothing with labels, no sugar for sure. And I just drank the water and felt what it feels like. I really recommend you try that. It's satisfying, and not just in a thirst-quenching way. It feels just good and happy and quite wonderful and at a very, very low level. That for me is the dopamine feeling. Okay, I'm going to get a little deeper, and then we're going to get into practical. Dopamine is released in your body in two basic ways. There's this volumetric way, which is kind of like just dopamine through your whole blood and everywhere. And generally, this is not what you're looking for. It's one of the reasons why you don't want to use a drug to bump up your dopamine. It just moves that baseline up. You get the one big pulse at the beginning, but then you don't get the little pulses and the tying good events to good behavior. Then there's the synaptic way. That's where one neuron sends little dopamine packets out to the other neuron. That's very localized, and that is exactly what you want. Not only does it say, let's feel that goodness, but it also seems to help in rewiring the neurons. The neurons end in like spines, and the spines kind of make random connections. These random connections either get used or they don't. If they get used, and I think if they're reinforced with dopamine, but I haven't looked into it to that depth, they stay, they become there. That is learning. That is basically neuroplasticity. I'm not going to go into it in this video, but what little I've looked into, like microdosing psilocybin and that kind of deal, seems to work in that direction. But I have no experience with that. That's the science of dopamine. That's why it's in your brain. Way back, it's about searching and seeking and making your life better and letting you live. It's about food and mates. We're going to use it for more. Let's talk about good ways that you can affect the dopamine in your brain. I'm going to start with just behavioral stuff, things that you can do through how you act and how you think and what state you put yourself in. Not anything involving what you eat or drink or inject or anything on that line. Completing tasks is going to make you feel really good about the task. It's kind of the reward to the task. Definitely at the end of it, there's going to be an opportunity for dopamine. But the trick here is we want to actually make the task that you're doing become addictive so you really enjoy doing it. Some tasks just look overwhelming for for all of life, but for the dopamine thing, break it up into smaller units. And I recommend you take these projects and you actually make a work list, a bunch of things you plan on doing the next time you have a work day. I'm going to put this all in terms of working on my boat, because this is what I did when I developed all this procedure. During the week, I was going to work, to make freedom chips to be able to take off and go sailing. And in the evenings, I would have dinner and I would write down some things I should work on the boat. And I had this list. It was growing, and it was becoming demoralizing, quite honestly. But on the weekends or on an evening when I was free, I would do some of those projects. And I would try to look at the list and say, okay, this is going to get me free. This is going to make me feel good. And did the project with as good of an attitude as I could. And then afterwards, I would cross off the item on the list. And I went so far as, when I'm doing a project, sometimes another project comes to mind, and I'll do that because I'm right there. When it came to marking it off the list, I'd actually write it on the list, the new project, and then mark that one off too. Because I'm getting that dopamine hit and I'm associating that line item with the thing I did. I'm doing this to reprogram my brain to want to do these things. Now, at first, I was wildly overwhelmed with my new boat. And I would work on it, and then I kind of got this process going, and I noticed that not only was it less overwhelming to work on the boat, I started looking forward to the weekends and getting something done and being able to install this new system. And it made me more industrious. And I brought that same mindset to actual working. I was always kind of a little ahead of the curve as far as technology goes, but I I noticed that I would dive deeper into things. I eventually started like programming GPUs, really difficult stuff that almost nobody seems to do. And it's because I have this feeling that if I learn something new, if I do that work, I feel good about it. It's actually fun. Another thing that's going to make you feel generally better and a higher dopamine is the feeling of gratitude. I don't know if that's exactly the right use for the word, but I get it when I help people. I really like helping people. I used to, in the cruising community, just be helping people with their boats all the time because I had fun with it. Honestly, I don't do it as much now. Where I am, there's a lot of other guys, including locals with good work ethic, that will do the work, so I don't want to step on their toes. But also, I get to help people with these videos. There's a lot of videos in my back catalog that tell you how to do everything from designing a new awning to installing a bilge pump. And when I do one of those, I get a good feeling, you know? And when you write me and comment about how helpful that video was, oh, it gives me a really good feeling. So I actually read every single comment that I've ever gotten. I do it not because I'm such a great guy that wants to watch and make sure I can answer your questions, though, you know, I like doing that. It feels good. I get a dopamine hit every time. So I'm addicting myself to this whole process of making you guys videos. Part of gratitude also, this is something I read recently, I hadn't heard before, but I think it's important right now. One of the tricks to make that baseline go up in like a non-destructive way that you don't have a loss later on. It's like there's maybe a few variables that adjust that baseline up and down in a somewhat permanent way. And one of them is saying to yourself, understanding, accepting that you're living in marvelous, wonderful times. And we do. We live in tremendously good times right now. Go through history. Nobody's lived as well as we have. Virtually everybody has all the food they want. We're to the crowns of creation right now. Now, it's not cool to say that. What apparently is cool is to say how horrible humans are and how we're destroying the planet and all of that. You believe all that, your dopamine's going to go right through the floor. It's demonstrably not true. We're living in wonderful times. I would rather live the life I'm living now than to be King Louis. I got a flush toilet in the other room. You know, he didn't. Life is great. Eating high protein foods was on a list of things that seems to bring up dopamine. Not my personal experience, but I just did a little research for this video. The other things on that list were offline human interaction. I think that is important, and I'm not getting as much of it as I used to here where I'm doing YouTube and just hanging around with family and a small circle of people. I gotta get out and work on that. Exercise, oh yeah, well, everybody knows that. And I have been pushing myself to get back from the surgeries, you know, riding my bike and walking and hiking and kayaking and those kind of things. And I do always feel better afterwards. It's kind of hard to get myself to do it sometimes, especially when I have a little pain. Meditation and being in a flow state. I was so disappointed right after my surgeries with all the drugs and everything. I couldn't get back into this flow state, I guess you could call it. I call it the way I think, which is not in words. I just think a little differently than most people. Literally for months, I couldn't think properly. I was thinking in a narrative, not in this multidimensional shape. And I was a little afraid that it was just getting too old and I wouldn't be able to do it anymore. But it's back, and this is how I do my engineering and my inventions. So this is wonderful. And this feels good. This definitely feels good for me. The last thing on the list is sex, both pursuing it and doing it. And yeah, I'm trying to get more of that in my life. I'm looking for that woman to go sailing with, to have the adventuresome life. And haven't found her quite yet, but, you know, the search is fun. Non-behaviorally, but probably not bad things to do. Chocolate. There's a drug in chocolate that seems to bump up dopamine pretty good. You can overdo it, but I think it's a fine way. And caffeine. Now, I read a lot about caffeine and dopamine. If you do caffeine when you're doing something else with dopamine, it's an additive effect, apparently. I don't have any real experience with caffeine because I never consumed caffeine until after I got COVID. I was 60-ish before I started consuming coffee. So I don't have personal experience, but apparently it helps. It's important not to do it every time you do the dopamine deal because you want that variety, but I think it's a way of getting an extra boost. I believe them. Then there's a list of ways to negatively affect your dopamine levels. It still brings them up. That's about all you can do with dopamine yourself. But it does it in a way that gives you that like flat, boring, always the same addiction to nowhere. The ones that probably come up the most and affect a lot of people nowadays are death scrolling on your phone and porn. Both of those can be taken way to extremes, and not only do you not find joy in the action, but you don't find joy in other things anymore because they're just holding that artificial flat line up there. So try to avoid those. I'm going to go more into the death scrolling later on because I suffer from that. Non-behavioral things would be like listening to music or podcasts while you're doing a dopamine event. That will give you more dopamine, but again, you're kind of getting it for the wrong reasons. So I think if you wanted to use music while you're working on your boat project, that's good, but just don't do it every time. Or if you want to listen to a podcast while you're working, again, fine. But occasionally do whatever you do, work out, work on the boat, study, without any of those other distractions. You want to concentrate on getting the dopamine perk associated with the thing that you're trying to continue doing more of. There's foods, sugary, Dorito-y, crappy foods that do the same thing, and then they block the little dopamine hit you might get from eating broccoli that's cooked beautifully. That can be wonderful, but if you just ate a bunch of Doritos and then like a cake, the broccoli is just not even a thing. Your brain can't even tell it happened. But if you're hungry and you have an appetite for it and you think about it a little ahead of time, that broccoli can be wonderful. Use that. All of that can help. It can help with your diet. And drugs. Okay, drugs are the easy way to get dopamine. I guess cocaine and meth are just like huge dopamine dumps into your brain. I have never let my brain be affected by things like this. And if you've done it, if you've done it and stopped, you definitely know. I have friends who had cocaine issues for a long period of time, and it affects them forever. It really screws with the receptors, not just the level. It's not just a transient thing you can get over in a week. It's permanent, and they really feel that sunsets just don't do it for them anymore. And now they have to live this life with joy cranked down a little bit. It's almost like being deaf to happiness, right? So I'm sure it feels great because it is like, snorted dopamine, but it's not worth it in the long run. On that list are alcohol, nicotine, especially nicotine that you breathe in because it comes in so fast, smoking, of course. Inappropriate use of ADHD medications. I'm not a psychiatrist, so if you need them and he agrees you need them, you better be taking them, but don't take them to make studying more fun. Don't take them to get a speed trip out of them. They are basically amphetamine. And I understand that MDMA, particularly if mixed with caffeine, and the jury's still out on that. There's studies every which way, but apparently that can do the same kind of problems. At least temporarily, and then you're going to be in a hole afterwards. Again, no personal experience. So my goals for myself were to have a generally higher level of happiness and to essentially addict myself to good behaviors, to make me want to do the things that I intellectually want to do. If you look at the about on this YouTube channel, it doesn't say sailing channel. It doesn't say investment channel. It says it's an intentional life channel. That's always been my thing. Before I even thought seriously about going sailing, I wanted to not live my life as a sheep. I wanted to plan what was ahead of me and do the things that would get me there. And this whole dopamine thing really, really helped with that. So I got myself a little addicted to doing boat projects. Yay. Another thing that I guess is similar, probably didn't have a lot of it when I was 20 and doing the studies, but because I did all that and I got the boat together and I went off sailing, I got something else. I think it goes in there with flow and meditation. It's what I call peak experiences. If you get yourself out sailing, you're going to run into them. For me, some of the peak experiences that I remember the feeling of it to this day, not just that I did it, not look at the picture, oh yeah, that happened. It made such an intense change to me and made me want to enjoy that life more. When I sailed to Hawaii, walking out on that volcano and using my walking stick to actually play in liquid lava, liquid rock, right out of the depth of the earth, and I'm playing with it on a stick. Wow, it was really something. The first time I saw a whale shark, it blew my mind. They're not dangerous or anything. They're huge. The leopard spots on them, it does things to you when you look at it. I know why leopards are shaped like that or marked like that. Some little animal totally gets lost in that pattern. I got lost in the whale, just lost in him for a while, and it felt wonderful. If he wanted to, he probably could have eaten me. After my run-in with the mako shark, though I don't recommend it, and I'll never knowingly do it again, but, being afraid and keeping my wits and doing the right things afterwards, that was a high. It really was. I had one other thing, and it was mundane, really, from a sailing point of view. I had just come down the western coast of the U.S. and Mexico, come into the Sea of Cortez, spent a few days, I think a week or so in Cabo, and then when I sailed from Cabo across the mouth of the Sea of Cortez over to, I guess it was Isla Isabela, about the second night, I just felt so good. The sailing was perfect and easy and no challenges. And everything was what it should be. And up until that point, I had never seriously listened to Jimmy Buffett. It just seemed too cliche on a sailboat in Seattle to listen to Jimmy Buffett. I listened to Grateful Dead or whatever. But somebody just given me a whole bunch of bootleg Jimmy Buffett CDs back then. And I started putting those on and listening through my headphones. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. It's just one of the things I look back on. I've had several like that. And there's like no reason for them, but you just feel so great. Feel like you've succeeded. You've done this thing and now you're reaping the rewards. And it just feels wonderful. Probably, though, another thing I have no experience with, but the stories I hear when your kids are born. And I can see that. I mean, that's pretty low and visceral in your brain. That's what you're built for. So that's probably a thing. So if you've had that, you know what I'm talking about with these other things. I feel I brought these learnings into my everyday life, definitely into my cruising life. I have one more good thing that I've done and I do, or I used to do, and then I'll get into the bad things. When I would sail out of Florida into the Bahamas or further east, I would always start my cruise this way. I would leave wherever in Florida. I would sail to a safe place in the Bahamas. And then life gets easy once you've made your crossing. There's a Gulf Stream in the middle. And instead of continuing right through the Bahamas, I would just hang there for a while. And I would really only read a book. Now, this was easier before everybody had a cell phone and there was cell connection and service everywhere. So I would just read a book, or eventually it became my Kindle, but it's still a book. And I would just keep doing that as like my only entertainment. Basically, I would eat, sleep, and read until I became bored. I was recalibrating my dopamine. I was getting rid of traffic. I was getting rid of television. I was getting rid of lots of humans demanding my time, and all of that had to go away first. I moved my baseline down. I went on a fast of dopamine, essentially, and everything went down. Then I could start really enjoying every little nuance of what cruising was. I really recommend you do that. I recommend I do that again. As technology moved on, I started, instead of reading a book, I would watch like TV series that I had recorded, downloaded in streaming kind of ways. Probably the same effect, really. Maybe a little less or slower, but anyway, kind of the same deal. But lately, I have a cell phone and I get a Bahamas card as soon as I get someplace, and bang, I got data. And then I check my YouTube channel and I watch videos and I keep the dopamine up and up. it's dumb. I gotta really actively stop doing that. I need to live my life at a lower level of dopamine so I can appreciate the peaks more. And everyone today is like really addicted to their cell phone. It just, you get bored for a second. I've seen little babies in restaurants that have a tablet in front of them. They don't even have language skills yet, and they're playing on a tablet. It makes me sad, quite honestly. So how would you fix these dopamine addictions that are bad dopamine addictions? And there really appears to be only one answer. There is no magic bullet. You certainly don't want to like do cocaine to, change it in that direction. You just have to stop doing it. You have to go on a fast. You have to just bring down the levels so that you can find joy out of them. So what I'm actually saying is, you shouldn't be watching my videos, right? Yeah. But maybe not my videos, right? I think if you abuse YouTube like I do, kind of as a drug, where given no thought in my head, this has got way worse since I had the cancer surgeries and everything, because I simply couldn't get out of bed, right? So what can I do? I got addicted to the damn thing, and I'm just going from video to video. Well, try not to do that. Have a time when you're going to watch YouTube. Watch good stuff that you want to watch. I mean, you got to do a little bit of searching around to find the new good channels. But if you just watch the things that you plan on watching, the things you've subscribed to and set your notifications for, not only will you not be death scrolling, and don't even get me started on how horrible Facebook is for that, but you're going to improve your recommendations on YouTube. If I remember when I was doing the Bank Manager project and I was just looking into physics, board design, electrical engineering, I would turn on YouTube and look at the suggestions, and I was really proud of that. And then sometime I would go off and death scroll into lolcat and whatever, stupid stuff. And the next day I would look and I go, oh my God, I don't want to be that guy. And that was stopping me, putting it away, and then only using it when I had something I wanted to see. So if you can manage it, I recommend that. Now, along with that recommendation, you do want to see the things you wanted to see. And I hope my videos are one of them. So you need to subscribe, push the subscribe button. There's a little button now, it's like a bell, and it's the notify button. You also have to push that if you want to be notified when my videos come out. And then along the lines of just helping out my channel, I'd really appreciate it if you would do the thumbs up, leave a comment, and if you got any friends in your life that could benefit from my videos, grab a link, send it to them. Lots of you do. There's hundreds and hundreds of links sent out from my channel every month, every week, and I think it really promotes the channel. So thank you so much. Bye from Clark on Temptress.